Welcome to LinkedUp, Breaking Boundaries in Education, a podcast that focuses on what is happening in education today, connecting everyone to the movers and shakers that are breaking boundaries in the education arena.
Welcome to LinkedUp, Breaking Boundaries in Education. This is Jamie and Jerri here again. This is our third day at ISTE, second day recording. We just love to be able to get people on the spot at ISTE. And we've kind of hit some rock stars here. So
we have, and I'm surprised we got this one on the spot. She has had a, as you say, full dance card. She has been so busy, but I also want to say, returning guest.
Yes,
definitely. And we're so happy to have you,
Kaylah. So Kaylah, this is so funny because it's so timely. Because when we had you on our podcast last, we were at ISTE in New Orleans. That was
2 years ago, yes.
And we did the episode,
20 to watch.
Prison. Well, no,
yes.
The prison. You were at ISTE 20 to watch.
Oh,
she
yes,
was at ISTE 20 to watch.
In New Orleans, yeah. I was at ISTE 20 to watch. And we were talking about the session, Empowering Student Voices in the School to Prison Pipeline.
School to Prison Pipeline.
My friend and colleague at the time, Kat Crawford, was on with me. And we had this incredible session in New Orleans where we had 4 formerly incarcerated students come.
The students on.
Yes.
Episode. Right,
yes.
Right,
and we talked all about that session, and it was really lovely. And I actually did a similar session here. We're in Denver, in Colorado. I do a lot of work with the Colorado DYS, the Division of Youth Services.
Because there you were doing in that state too,
yes,
right?
as well. Yes, in New Orleans. So I had a session. It was technically a student panel, but they were currently incarcerated, and so they weren't able to attend live.
Sure.
We had them virtually. They had recorded some lovely responses to questions. So we kind of tried to do a similar thing that we did 2 years ago. Yeah. So that was one of the sessions we did here this week.
Yeah. So I want to just backpedal a little bit. What brought you to want to work with students that are incarcerated? Because I think that scares a lot of educators.
Yeah, that's a great question. I've always been drawn to working with unique populations, right?
Yeah, I love that.
Even, I don't know, my first year teaching, it was just kind of from then on. And my innovator project started in 2017. I'm a Google Certified Innovator.
Okay.
And a couple of things that summer merged for me. I did my first service learning trip to Haiti, and I did the Google Innovator Academy, and those kind of collided. And I got to Haiti and realized I loved the people and I loved the place, and I felt like we could embolden them to make a difference in their own lives, right, in terms of education and access. And so all that to say, my innovator project became a fully fledged nonprofit called Go Teach, Be Love. And Go Teach, Be Love. So you have to be willing to go, you teach others, and you love people as they are. It's kind of the idea.
I love that.
That became my Google Certified Innovator project. I'm trying to make it a short story, but
that's okay.
I did a lot of work with Haiti. I was in and out of the country for a couple of years and then lived there full time starting in August of 2019. And you can imagine the pandemic hit in 2020. And so I was kind of booted out. But that really just fostered my love of underserved populations, right? So in Haiti, teachers, only 20% of teachers receive any form of professional development at all. And they have a lot of restrictions on how they learn. So they have a lack of access to materials, and they have low or limited or no technology. Right. I mean, even where I lived in my home, there was solar panels and backup battery generators and all those things, or nothing, if the sun wasn't out or however it was. So I got sent back to the States in early 2020, and you guys know Kat Crawford.
Yes.
She was working with Break Free Education at the time, and they were hiring. And honestly, I had never even thought about how do students in the juvenile justice system learn. And that's why I'm such an advocate for bringing awareness to that, because a lot of teachers tell me that. I've never thought about how kids in the system learn. Once a kid's arrested and they're in a secure school, what happens to them? I never thought about that. And she said, Kaylah, it's literally your passion. I know you, I know this work, and you'd be a great fit. Perfect. And she was so right. It is my passion. I've been doing it now this is my 5th year starting with them, with Break Free. And I'm their director of instructional tech and blended learning. And I literally have the best job. I get to travel around to these facilities, I get access to places that most people don't.
Right.
And I get to try to drive meaningful change. I mean, it's really an incredible role that I'm very privileged. But so it's been my passion and my kind of personal mission, throughout my life. But that's the long version of how I got connected to working in the juvenile justice space.
I have a follow-up question before we talk about the book. So what is it that you're seeing that needs to change in the juvenile justice system as far as the education piece? What have you really tried to push?
Yeah, Jerri, I don't think we have enough time on the podcast today.
Can you just pick one or two?
Yeah, there's a lot, honestly. I think there are really good systems hiring good people. They're great educators. They're really making a difference in these kids' lives inside the system.
Right.
And then, there's a lot of people that are just kind of stuck there as an educator, and it's not such a great environment for kids. So, I mean, it needs an entire system redo. I mean, our whole justice system is completely messed up and
we want to inspire them, not continually punish. Right.
And that's the big change. Right now, it's very punitive and it's not rehabilitative. And we want it to be rehabilitative. We want these kids, if they have to be in a system like this, which I would advocate, like, let's not even have the system we have. But if they have to be in a system like this, let's create it to be rehabilitative. So when they leave, they have filled gaps in their academics.
Yes.
They've learned how to control emotions, and they can be a promising member of society and do something they love with their life. That's kind of the goal.
And it's better for everyone.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Everyone, everyone, it would be, I mean, even, I talk about this all the time. A lot of spaces use restorative practices,
right?
Which is huge. And like, these kids are learning how to control their emotions. I don't know that I know how to control my emotions, even as an adult. Like, that would have been so valuable to me as a teenager to learn. So the idea is they're coming into a lot of these facilities and they're filling gaps in their academics. They're getting their high school diploma or a GED or something like that. Yeah, they're learning. And this is all like the positive parts, right? There's a ton of negative. I mean, it's a really screwed up system. I'm trying to be like politically correct here and not say words you have to bleep
focus, out. Or is it more of a social, emotional, and learning?
It's different in each. It's different in each place. So,
I see.
So JJ facilities in each state run very differently, and we don't break free. We don't directly manage any of them technically. Okay. So we support teachers. We encourage. We provide, things that they might need access to or something, and then we run workshops so in a facility, like let's use the one here in Colorado, for example.
Right.
There's a facility about 40 minutes from here, and it's a lovely facility, lovely in meaning it's got great teachers. They care about kids. They create a nurturing environment, right?
Right.
But then there's all the other side that's not education. It's the actual facility. It's the officers who tell them when to shower, tell them when to eat, like the safety security part, right? So there's always two people in charge. There's the education and there's the facility. And they often don't agree, as you can imagine. Sure. Education prioritizes education, facility prioritizes security, and safety.
Yes.
And we kind of have to get people on board with the same core values. Right. So we do a little bit of that work as well.
Yeah, that's a heavy lift, a lot of work.
Yeah,
there.
It is.
But I guess that is you coming in from the outside is, I guess, like a consultant type. Mm-hmm. I guess that is a nice way to kind of match.
Yeah, it is. It is. And we do a lot. I personally do a lot of work. So I'll come to a principal and say, okay, what are your goals for this year? And we'll talk about it. And then I help them create professional development opportunities around those goals, right? So I'll come in and I'll work with teachers. I'll train them through, full day sessions. Sometimes I get to co-teach with them in the classroom, which is what I personally love, because then I get to spend time with kids, which is what I love. But then, other work involves other members of the Break Free team, traveling and doing some of the core value work and things like that. And then others is trying to shape policy in different states and really empowering people and connecting them together to create a community, because it's very isolating to work in the JJ space when you're the only English teacher working in such a restrictive environment.
Right. The collaboration would not be there.
I think I resonate so much with that because of my time in Haiti. I felt really isolated there, because of just language barriers and just different things. I felt very isolated. And so I'm really passionate about building community. So I try to do that as well. And we're building an online community. It's coming from Break Free, which is fun. But right now it's like Yes, I, Kaylah,
So
will
across states then?
across states.
And how
Yeah.
many states are you in?
I mean, we worked in 42
Okay.
through the
Good.
existence of Break Free. We've been around for about 14 years, I think now. So yeah, so it's just going to be an online community, like a social media platform, but just for people working in the JJ space. So
That's great.
I'm
We
pretty
did have
excited about that.
someone on our podcast from New Jersey who is working hard on reforming the system in New Jersey. Do you work in New Jersey
Yeah,
also?
no, we don't have a lot of work in New Jersey right now. Yeah, please do.
Yes.
Please do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What
Great.
age range is are the students?
Yeah, so the average age of a current justice involved student is around 15, and the average is a boy, is male. But
Right.
there's 10 to 24 really. So 10 to
Yes.
24, that's kind of what we've seen. And we will, we Break Free work with students anywhere in a detention center or jail that they have a school, right? So that's called a secure school. So even 18 to 24-year-olds might be in an adult prison, but there's some type of school. So in New Orleans, for example, we are very connected there with Travis Hill Schools. They run 2 different programs. One is in a 17 and under detention center, so short-term stays, and one is in an adult prison, but they're 18 to 24, and they're long-term stays. So, and the ages matter there as well.
Right.
But yeah.
Very interesting. Okay, so now last time you were on our podcast, you and Kat talked about some of the frameworks that you use. Can you talk a little bit about that, and then how you're actually showcasing that for K-12? Also?
Yeah.
Yes.
So Kat and I created this framework called Putting Out Fires, which is where the book has come from. And in my experience with juvenile justice spaces, I mean, it's just littered with chaos, right? And I mean, there's a lot of our world that you could say that phrase for,
You're right.
right?
Yes.
Like there's just so many things going on. But when I travel around and I ask teachers like, hey, how are you doing? They always kept saying, oh, I'm just putting out the same fire. I'm putting out fires and putting out fires. And so a couple of years ago, I really got interested in this. Like, why are we always putting out the same fire? Why are we always in this cycle of response, solving the same problem over and over? And so I did a lot of research on it. Kat and I created what we called the Putting Out Fires framework. And that's kind of where the book has come from, because I ran the framework with teachers in juvenile justice facilities for 2 years or 3 years. I don't know. I can't remember the numbers. And it made a big difference, just because it's a mentality shift, right? Hopefully once you go through the workshop or the book or something like that, it allows you to see challenges as opportunities,
Right.
not like I'm under the burden of the same challenge over and over again. I'm going to switch that to be, I have an opportunity to create change. And it sounds like, oh yeah, Kaylah, that sounds great, right? But it's true. And it kind of stems from a book called Upstream. I don't know if you've read that by Dan Heath. Have you read that one?
I was just reading your analogy to that in
Okay.
your book, and I wanted you to talk about it. Yes, it's a great analogy.
It is. And that came out in 2020 or 2021, somewhere around there. And it's incredible. He wrote a book, and if you haven't read the Heath brothers, I love them. I read everything
too.
they put out, and it's just, I think, like Power of Moments is one. Made to Stick, Switched. They're all about this, like how you look at things. It's a mentality, right? So Upstream came out by Dan Heath, and it's all about the idea that there are multiple solutions to any singular problem you might have, right? And you think, okay, sure. Like, is there really? But it's true. And he talks about this metaphor from an old folk tale. There's 2 men standing on the riverbank fishing, right? Enjoying their leisurely afternoon, whatever. And a kid comes down the river drowning. And they do what any normal human being would do. They jump in the river and try to save the drowning child. And before they know it, there's another kid and another kid and another kid. And all of a sudden, they're stuck in this cycle of response, right?
And they're getting exhausted.
Yeah. And of course,
by saving each
frustrated,
one.
Like, what's happening? Until all of a sudden, one of them leaves, and they said, where are you going? And he says, I'm going upstream to get the guy throwing all the kids in the river. Right. So it's this mentality that the farther upstream we go, the more solutions you might find for that singular problem. Right. So once I read that, I thought, okay, so if we're constantly putting out fires, we're constantly solving the same problem, and there are solutions, many solutions to a singular problem, what do we do with all of that, right? So I really created, and you'll see it in the book. I was telling you before we started, it's a workbook. It's not like a leisurely, I'm going to read this on the beach this summer while I'm chilling out book. It's built to, you start with a problem you actually are experiencing and work through. There's 25, not to make anyone like overwhelmed, but there's 25 activities in the book that you actually work through to create a solution to your real problem. So you have to understand the problem, what's causing it, all the root causes of it, to fully understand what solution is going to be best. Yeah. Then you look at the people involved, right? So because that matters, we need to design for everyone involved, not just for ourselves. And then you create as many solutions as possible. There's a lot of details.
So you were saying that there's 25 activities that you can go through. Now, is that to solve one problem? You would go through all 25?
I mean, initially, yes.
Yes.
And then once you do that,
you're owning that.
You're owning it, right? And your mentality shifts and you start to see that as it comes. So do I, now that I've done this hundreds of times, do I go through all 25 for every single problem? No. Right. You start to realize like, okay, now I can do it quickly. Here's my problem. Here's my priorities. Here's the root cause. Here's the person. Here's the solution. Let's move it forward.
So there's design thinking involved.
Yes. Oh, it's steeped throughout the book.
So this is really interesting because when you talk about putting out fires, and we're doing that constantly, we're going in this vicious cycle, it's all about reacting instead of responding.
Yes.
So now you are teaching the process of being able to work through, and maybe in 25 steps initially, but then eventually it is going to click, and it becomes part of your normal routine to be able to respond properly instead of continually reacting and never getting to those multitude.
That's
of,
right.
Of
and that's his tagline for the Upstream Thinking book, a quest to solve problems before they happen. And I really thought, like, that's such a beautiful world. Like, can we solve problems before they happen? And I think we can. But the crucial part of this, there's a lot of design thinking in there. So if you're familiar with design thinking, I've modified a lot of typical design thinking exercises you might think about, but it's the process of putting them together that is kind of the journey you're on. But the real thing is that putting out fires framework, when you create all those solutions, then we categorize them into 4 categories, like extinguish, detect, contain, prevent, for you to understand which solution is best for me in this moment. Because sometimes problems need an immediate solution. We need it to be gone right away. Like I need this to be done now. And others we want to prevent, right? But prevent requires resources and time and funding, and you may not have that. So it's not a leveling system. You don't start with extinguish and work your way. You kind of create solutions in these 4 categories, and you choose the one that works best for you in the moment.
That's amazing. So what is it then? Like, it sounds to me that you can use it for personal. You can use it for as a teacher, professional. So what are some cases that you see it being used? Like, oh gosh, I wish I had my book ready for that person. Like, what are some examples?
Well, speaking personally, my family makes fun of me because if we just like can't decide where to go to dinner, I'm like, okay, get your sticky notes out, right? We're gonna problem solve this, right? Right. So like it can be done in small things, but in a large example, this last year, Break Free has implemented a virtual reality pilot. So we're using Class VR headsets, and I've loved working with the company. But 2 years ago, we had the problem of how do we get science experiments into classrooms, right? Because I can't bring equipment in, I can't bring things in. And so it really is an interesting way to kind of walk through that process of what's the root cause and what is a potential solution. And so it was created that VR might be a potential solution. And so this kind of the living proof of what's in the book. We got a grant, we demoed products, we chose Class VR, and now they're in 10 facilities across the country, and we're getting ready to start our second pilot. And it's been really exciting to kind of put that into place. But
so what is the theme here at ISTE that, like Jerri said, if we let's I guess we could do a drinking game too, but how many times is AI in a session here at ISTE, right?
I know.
And so but that's the struggle, is how to roll it out. I can see this as being a framework for a district in doing so.
Absolutely. And that somebody asked me too, is it individual or collaborative? And I think that's the beauty of it, right? It can be both.
It can be both.
Like I can do this individually for a singular problem I'm having as a teacher in my classroom. I have no admin support. I have no funding. Like, because we talk about also part of the problem is what's your influence, right? What's your influence over the problem?
Yes.
Because there are a lot of problems in our world, right? Yeah. But if I try to solve a problem I don't have any real influence over, I'm just going to be frustrated and burnt out, and I'm not going to be successful. And then I'm just going to throw my hands up and say, oh, what's the point, right?
Yes.
But if we look at what's within our influence, we can really make real change, right? And if I find that there's a problem I really want to solve, but I don't have the influence, I need an ally who has influence. So it's a lot of nuances. But I like the idea that you could do it individually or you can do it collaboratively as a group on one problem, one big problem your whole school faculty is facing or something. And it works with kids too. This is great. I've done a lot of this same work with students specifically in the JJ system. We give them problems like the homeless population in their area or pedestrian safety or protecting our coral reefs or something like that. And allow them to help them like
problem-based learning.
And like walk through some of these activities and create solutions. And
so
then
multi-purpose.
It
Sounds
is
like a good book study, actually.
It could be.
Right.
It could be. That's
Well,
a good
I was
idea.
reading your book and I had an aha moment.
Oh, okay.
Yes, you said we have to identify the correct problem. And then I thought of that little scenario with Dan Heath. And I think that's what we're doing. We're jumping in and saving them one at a time so many times that we're not backing up and solving the right problem.
That's right.
What is the right problem?
Yeah. So in the book, we talk about that. It's looking at your level of influence and the impact the problems have. Because when you kind of, line out your problems, if you will, you have 10 problems, right? Or no, we have many more. I did have a teacher tell me once, I don't have any problems. And I said, oh, well, I want your job or your life, maybe. I don't know. Because we all have problems. But I think
she didn't know what the problems, how to identify.
Yeah, that's what I said. I said, I think you're blind to some problems. And that's what happens too, right? We become blind to the problems we face every day because we face them every day, right?
They could become normal.
Right? It's just our normal routine. So, but yeah, so I think identifying the right problem is really important because you want to spend your time wisely.
Yes.
So it's like a sweet spot. That's what I call it. Like, here's your sweet spot, right? It's the ones that you have the highest influence over and that impacts the most people. You want to start there. And that doesn't mean the other ones aren't important. The other problems aren't important. They just might not need your focus in this specific moment right now.
Sure. Right? And I think one of the biggest problems we have are student behaviors in the classroom. And I think we're not identifying the right problem because each student's going to be different why their behavior is going that way. And we don't want to take the time to do it.
That's right. And that's why it's important to look at all the people involved because if you put yourself in the mentality of a student experiencing the problem, what is it that they're going to think and feel and say and do about this specific problem? And you would design a solution for them very differently than you would for yourself.
Exactly.
Right. And not all solutions are good solutions. Just because they exist doesn't mean you need them. Right. So if you look at the kid drowning example, like you're extinguished, that's what they were doing. They're extinguishing the problem. They're just pulling the kids out of the river one at a time.
Right.
But if you continuously get kids coming down the river, two people aren't going to be able to handle that. So the next category would be detect. So maybe that means we're doing lifeguards, right? And like life preservers are available or something. We're analyzing it a little bit, like how many kids come down in a day. Like, there's that kind of thing. And then contain. Maybe we're teaching kids to swim, right? Maybe I don't want to just protect you from this river. I want to protect you from any body of water. So we minimize that impact. And then prevent could be like draining the river of water altogether. But like our eco-friendly friends are never going to believe that's a good idea. Right. And I would agree with them. So like not every solution is a good solution. So it's really finding that beautiful one that fits for the problem itself.
Yes. I love this. And even though the book was written out of your work with the juvenile justice system, it's something that a regular classroom. So I'm taking this home to my daughter that's a school counselor.
Yeah, absolutely. It can be any, there's also examples in there because I know these activities, could be a little bit difficult maybe. And if I were someone doing the book at my house by myself, I'd want an example,
Right.
So there's QR codes you can scan and hear my voice talking through,
Oh, fun.
like what to
Nice.
do.
Brilliant.
But there's also examples. So like a teacher example and an administrator example for every single
I
problem.
saw that. Yes.
So it really spans, any kind of role in education. Yeah.
Very
Oh, it seems
helpful.
so helpful.
Yes,
Oh,
and so
good. I'm glad
timely.
you like it.
Practical,
Because we do
workable.
hear
Yeah.
of so many teachers putting out fires right
That's
now.
right.
After the pandemic,
Yes.
it seemed like
Yes.
we
Yeah.
had more to put out. So this is very timely.
Yeah, I hope so, because teachers are leaving the profession.
Yes.
Because they're burnt out and they're exhausted
Yes.
and all those words. And like, not that this is going to just be a huge game changer in that. But if one teacher could say, you know what, I'm going to keep teaching because I'm solving this
Yes.
problem and I'm feeling like I still have value in the classroom, I think that's worth it. And it's
Yes.
important.
And I could see student support teams using this
Yeah, absolutely.
as a framework. They're in framework for solving the problems.
Yeah,
I just
absolutely.
love this.
Good. I'm glad.
I'm going to tell Kansas about this.
Good. It just
right.
came out, a couple days ago.
I
So it's
know.
really nice to talk to someone having said, like, I've read part of it already. I'm
I
like,
did. I sat down
that's a
and
really-
read
yeah.
some.
that's a really
Yes.
surreal experience.
I loved it.
Yeah.
I didn't get totally in,
Yeah,
but the first part was great.
That's good. Thank
So,
you for that, Jerri.
I plan
Brilliant,
to.
actually.
Yes.
Brilliant. Well,
Yes.
congratulations.
Thank you so
Yes,
much.
congratulations.
Yeah.
And thank you for the gifts that you are giving
It's
to
really
education.
gifts,
You are
really.
really giving us
Oh, that's very sweet. Thank
things that can help. And thank you for working with the juvenile justice students and giving them empathy and love, because that's what they need.
you. Yeah. that
We need
is-
more people like you that are,
Oh, yeah. I agree, because we need more advocates, right? We need more
Yes.
people in their corner,
yes.
rooting for them to be
It
successful.
just makes
Yeah.
my heart feel
Oh,
good
good.
to know that you do that work.
Oh, thank you.
Person.
Yes.
Thank you.
And thank you for carving out time for us today.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's been a
Yes.
busy conference, but I'm always excited to see the two of
I
you.
know. I hope you can relax a few days.
I hope
Yes.
so.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, where can people find your book?
Okay, so it's in person here at the conference, and then
Right.
it's available on all online
Amazon.
retailers in August.
Yes.
Yeah,
In
Amazon.
August, not yet.
Not yet. I know. You got a brand new
wow. This
Oh,
just
actually,
makes it
Actually,
more
this was
special.
released around that time.
There you go. I think right now it's August 6th that comes out
Oh,
on
okay.
Amazon. You can pre-order now if you want, but it's on, Target, Barnes & Noble, anywhere online.
I love it.
Yeah, it's very
Good
cool.
luck with the sales.
Thank you so much. Thank
yes.
you.
Thank you for listening. And if you would like to stay linked up, be sure to follow us on Apple and Spotify, and subscribe to us on YouTube.